Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to do a quick video, well, not so much, about the most original concept ever created, and that is a tier list. So in this particular case, I do US presidents, because why not? We're going in order, of course. I have 8 rankings. It goes from perfect all the way up to basically an idiot that tried to destroy America. So, fun fact, or just a quick spoiler alert on this particular regard, there's only going to be 1, maybe 2 in the bottom category. Just so you know. Alright, I'm gonna go in order, because that would be the most convenient. First one, President George Washington. I don't really have to say much. No, the first president's probably, in my opinion, the second best. And the next one is the best one is coming up relatively quickly. In this particular regard, created the nation, just did not use executive privilege in most cases, so he just let everything go. An apolitical guy is exactly the kind of guy you needed as president of the United States, especially in the founding of the nation. Following up, John Adams. This guy, vice president under Washington. So you have the Aliens and Sedition Act and that kind of stuff. So it's honestly just bad. The rest around it, when it came to the average policy, it's kind of forgettable. But just the moment when you introduce something like a Sedition Act, no, that just goes exactly against what America's supposed to be, and as a result, he just ends up at one of the bad presidents. Followed up by the best president, Thomas Jefferson. So, Louisiana Purchase happened under this guy. He kicked John Adams out of office as part of the anti-federalist movement in this particular case. As a guy, he was also fervently in favor of states' rights, which I am as well. So basically, he just fits perfectly in me. I call myself a Jeffersonian for a fucking reason. Next up, James Madison. Don't know much about the guy. I think, yeah, he was under the British-American War, so great leader in that particular time, re-elected without any issues. Followed up by James Monroe. And this particular guy, he too falls in the perfect category, but after Washington. And in this particular case, he's responsible for Monroe Doctrine, basically putting America on a defensive instead of being a force of colonialism and aggressive methods. So I agree with that's pretty good. Then we have John Quincy Adams. Don't know much about the guy, so I'm just gonna put him as okay. Followed up by Andrew Jackson. So this was one of the military leaders that successfully beat off the British in the invasion. But when it comes to the presidency, I have to just freshen up on this. So we have judicial reforms, better go in your removal act. So yeah, he was against the bank essentially, like centralized banking. So I agree with that. Pretty much everything else around it, it's a bit controversial, I would say. But you must remind yourself that in this particular time and era, we were basically at war constantly. So this is one of the reasons why I put him a little higher than the rest. Van Buren going up at 7. Honestly, it's just forgettable. Though, when it came to history classes, I don't really know much about the guy. And then we come to one of the bad times in American history. So we have Harrison, forgettable. He was only 100 days in office, I think, a little around that, and then he died. Then we have we have Tyler. He's horrible. And why is this? For a reason that's simple. The Whig Party at the time was directly related to the British period. Basically, it was a movement trying to bring America back into the British Empire. Which means basically every single one of these morons, you would be able to call him a traitor. So this is why I'm going to put every single Whig member, with the exception of Harrison, because of course he was only 100 days in office, I will put them all in the horrible category for that particular reason. So afterwards we have Polk. Okay, I don't really remember much about the guy. I'm just going to do a quick fresher up, I suppose. So one term, transportation, foreign policy, so partition of Oregon, annexation. Basically the leader under the Mexican-American War. And when it comes to the rest around it, it's not really that remarkable. So independent treasury system. So yeah, he basically was the one that instituted the banking system prior to the sham that we have right now, which is called the Federal Reserve. Basically the founder of this. So we have Zachary Taylor coming up next. Horrible. Fillmore. Same story. And we have Pierce. This is basically prior to the Civil War, so we got him in office for about one term. And in his presidency there's just a lot of political strife. There's a lot of problems when it comes to economic policy. There's a lot of problems when it comes to foreign wars. Bleeding Kansas happened under his watch, and he basically just was all around a bad president. Just all around, just horrible. So that's where he ends up. Buchanan. This is the guy that was in office until 1861. So same problem happens here. So we have the Dred Scott decision happening just before he gets in. And his particular intervention regarding the case would be a bit funny, because he intervened and then he tries to counter it, and it just goes horribly wrong for his particular regard. In that particular case, there's the further strife, for the problem. So again, he was not the right leader at the time. And then we arrive at Abraham Lincoln. So this is the fun part. Reason for this is, at this particular moment, so we're arriving at 1861. Problem we have at this moment is there is a secession crisis ongoing. And the one thing you don't do in this particular crisis is you don't antagonize your opposition. So what did Lincoln do? He antagonized them. So this guy, he imprisoned journalists that were critical of him. He imprisoned congressmen that dared to criticize him. He even deported some of them. He rigged the election in Maryland, 1864 presidential election, to make sure that he would win that one again. He arrested state legislatures. He's illegally suspended constitutional rights of the American people in a particular stretch between DC and Gettysburg. So all around, he managed to successfully destroy what America was, which was a union based on voluntary interactions. So at that particular time, We arrive at civil strife. We get Andrew Johnson after the assassination. And he wasn't any good either, but he was better than Lincoln. At least Johnson didn't violate constitutional rights, but that's a very low bar to pass. So then we get the period Grant. So we have Ulysses Grant, so basically one of the generals during the Civil War. He was okay. Nothing really to mention, nothing really to criticize on. At least I need to look further into it to be able to provide a proper one. So this is basically just a superficial tier list at this point. Hayes, honestly forgettable. Garfield, he was only in office for like half a year until he got shot. So yeah, I guess neutral in this particular regard. So we get Arthur. I would say he's okay. And now we're arriving at basically the tail end of the 19th century. So we get Harrison, which so we have Cleveland and then Harrison, but let's be honest, they're both forgettable. And then we get McKinley. So this is the end of the 19th century. There's a little bit of financial issues ongoing. War with Spain, for an example, territorial gain. And then you have tariffs, civil rights, first civil rights movement. And he gets shot. So, at this particular point, we have, this is the second president that gets assassinated. He was honestly okay, not that much. We get Teddy Roosevelt. This is another one of those presidents that I think he is good, but not great. I think Taft falls in the same category. And then we have another dipshit extraordinaire, Woodrow Wilson. And I would say with the Federal Reserve System, with, well, imprisoning people for daring to oppose the US entry into the First World War, I think he would be another one to classify as a dipshit that tried to destroy the country. So yes, there's two. Harding. I think Harding is good. At least he tried to recover from the First World War and then the coming financial crisis at that particular point. So is at least a little improvement. Coolidge, another guy that I would say great. Too bad he didn't run for re-election. Hoover. Yeah, I think forgettable would be best to classify him at. Let's go for. So we have the Great Depression starting basically when he came to office. So it's obviously a little bit of an issue where a financial crisis occurs and then you get the new guy being blamed effectively. So you have, at this time, you also have Prohibition. So it was pretty obvious that wasn't going to happen. So there wasn't really much positive going around. But at least I think he's better than his successor, which is Roosevelt, the other one. And I would say with his financial policy, Roosevelt He made the Depression last another decade. Milton Friedman got a Nobel Prize for that, proving that. He also resegregated the armed forces. Oh no, sorry, that was Wilson. Basically, he was just another one of the typical Democrats that was just all around horrible presidency. He wasn't as bad as Lincoln or as Wilson, but he was, well, in that same category. Truman, I would say he's okay. Followed by Eisenhower, which I, particularly as someone who's, I think my channel is still named as Eisenhower conservative, I would say he's a great president. Followed by Kennedy. My expertise here lies more in the 20th century's presidents, so Kennedy, I myself believe he didn't win. I think Nixon won, and it's because of Chicago. There's a lot of mobster influence there, and there was a lot of election fraud in Texas, so I believe that Nixon won. But that is not relevant at this particular point. Kennedy, as his policy, I think it was okay. We get Lyndon Baines Johnson, and I would say, yeah. Model Society program, horrible. The guy, come on, you can't put him any higher than this, especially if he's involved in the assassination of his fucking boss. Come on, mate. He organized the assassination of Kennedy. Period. Followed by Richard Nixon. So, if it was 1960, Richard Nixon, I would have put him in good. But it's not 1960 Richard Nixon. It's 1968 Nixon. It's a little worse for wear. Ford, well, he was basically put in place by the CIA to then oust Nixon. Honestly, a bad president. Carter, horrible. Reagan, good. Bush, this is one of the guys that actually organized the assassination, together with his as chief of the CIA at the time. I would say bad. Clinton. The funny part about Clinton is basically the only time he is seen as a good president is because of the Republican-controlled Congress, which basically forced him to adapt all his policy. But when you come to the presidential policy of his own, I would say he's bad. Bush, horrible. Obama, horrible. Trump, I'd say good. And Biden, horrible. Now, we can change the order a bit. I think this is pretty much okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I think Trump is better than Reagan. It's pretty okay. I do think this. Yeah. Pretty much about a little better than that. I think the rest is pretty much spot on. There. So that's it basically. My tier list, at least at the moment. I can do a lot of more research when it comes to these particular topics, the legacy of each president, and then can do an updated variant. That's fine, but not at the moment. This is just what I want to keep it at. There's not really much going on for the rest of this video. Thank you kindly for watching, and I'll see you next time.